This is probably the largest crowd I have to address, because my voice is soft, because usually I talk one-to-one with people sitting in front of me, but the situation calls for a louder voice. I might not be able to match Brad's though, so you forgive me for that. So I'm going to share some thoughts drawn from my expertise as a physician, my experience having lived under the communist regime in China, and my expectation as an activist, what to look for in this situation. So as a physician, I practiced for about 10 years in the Tri-Cities after having been in Portland area for 15 years. I love the area. I've treated many patients, and probably some of you around here come to my clinic, and I have seen people now suffer from COVID, and I've wanted to have a way to prevent it and treat it. But after the rollout of the vaccine, especially after it come to April or May, I began to see signs that this is not the answer. So at first, there were some scientific publications that point to the fact that in a shortened period of studies, some of the safety studies were omitted. And then this spike protein that are produced by the vaccine were distributed to the area of the body that they are not supposed to. And then what really shocked me was when I heard from my friend in Seattle who lost her stepbrother, 32 years of age with no prior condition, 12 days after the second shot, died at home out of what they call a massive heart attack. 32 years old, previously healthy. So I started looking into the side effect of the VAERS system. I think by now many of you are familiar with the reporting system and saw that, oh my God, within a few months of this vaccine, the number of people who died from the vaccine were already more than the past 20 years reported for all the vaccines together. Now, normally, for something like that, it would have caused the regulatory agency to call a stop. I mean, when there was the swine flu, the vaccine that were put into the trial, after 50 reported deaths, they put a stop to it. But this one, in April, there were already 6,000 deaths, and they didn't do a thing, and they continue to push it. And then there are more and more studies and reports that come out of the nations where they have a high vaccination rate, like Israel, Singapore, Ireland, and their infection rates were higher than nations where there's very few people vaccinated. And it is now widely accepted that the vaccine does not prevent infection. Those people who, and I do have patients who are elderly and their children and grandchildren thought that by vaccinating themselves they would be protected their mom and grandma. No, they actually brought the virus into home and infected the elderly at home because they thought that I'm vaccinated, I won't pass on the virus. No, the studies show that they passed on just as much virus, maybe even more, compared to people who were not vaccinated. So it's not safe, it's not effective, so why would they still be pushing it onto everybody? Now here's where my experience as a Chinese came in. I came to the United States at the age of 24, so I grew up during the time that the nation was ruled by the communist regime, and there was the one-child policy. I think many people knew about the one-child policy, right? That people were only allowed one child per family, and at first they would use incentive. If you promise to have only one child between the couple, you would get bonuses. And then they would use pressure. If you do not adhere to the one-child policy, you will lose bonus and you will maybe even be punished at your work. And eventually they would be fired if they do not adhere to the one-child policy, and they would be forced to be taken off the registration list in the city, so their kids would not be able to register for school, and they would not have any of the rations. Sounds familiar? And then in the countryside, where people didn't care as much about the registry, they actually would round up pregnant women, take them in a van into the abortion center. So if they found that this is the second pregnancy, they would do the abortion right then and there and have them get sterilized immediately. Now, at that time, the United States would find this practice so inhumane, so grotesque, that people from China can apply for political asylum because of the one-child policy when they come here and may have had a second child. But then, now we're living in a situation where our government is going to enforce something to be introduced into our body without our consent, or we would have to lose our job. So I'm looking at a situation where I have escaped from a communist dictatorship, coming to freedom in the United States, only to see that freedom being encroached bit by bit, and maybe even be turning into one of those dictatorship countries. We can't let that happen. Right. And that's why I turned into an activist. So from a physician, I still am a physician. When I sit in the office, I still see people. But I also need to be an activist, because if that nation's freedom, liberty is gone, even if we can treat the disease and get better in physical health, we're not going to be living like real Americans. So what do we expect as activists? I know it's tough right now. I also know that it's tough, for the parents in Loudoun County in Virginia a few months ago, when they first realized what their kids were being fed to. But last night's victory in Virginia should give us hope. When the grassroots see what's happening and become activated, we're not only sitting there and waiting for them to take away our liberty, take away our right, and tell us what we can and cannot do, and dictate to us what we have to have not received, but rather say, hey, we are the people. We're here to take back our county, our state, and our nation, and we'll see the victory. And we don't have to be big shots. I mean, did you see that Mr. Edward Durr in New Jersey, this truck driver, grandfather of 6 and father of 3, he ran a campaign with less than $10,000, and he defeated the sitting Senate president, the Democrats in New Jersey, who has $1 million to the campaign chest. So I think we need to take heart. We need to be activated, not just to try to fight back our job, but to defend our liberty, and we will win. As God bless us, we will win. Thank you.
'Cause the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away.